Welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now with Jon Rothstein. Pleased to be joined by two-time national champion and UConn head coach Dan Hurley. Dan, welcome. What was your first memory of March Madness?
Starting fast, John. Yeah, I would say for me probably that Georgetown Carolina game. The two that come to my mind are obviously Lorenzo Charles with the tip-in dunk in Albuquerque. To beat that Houston team if I slam and jam it. But I would say that Georgetown game with Patrick Ewing just goaltending those shots to start the game, and then Michael Jordan to win it.
Now, you have went through March Madness as both a player and as a coach. How are the emotions different when you go through this great month in those two roles?
I think they're pretty similar. It's the most exciting time of the year. The magic of March, the magic of Selection Sunday, and just hearing those brackets revealed, seeing where you're going, what your matchup is going to be. You're more than likely playing a team that you're only familiar with from having seen them on TV a little bit. So it's just the excitement that you feel this time of year, especially when it's such a the regular season is such a grind. For 5 months to try to put yourself in a good position going into this this month. So I would say it's probably more taxing to be a coach because you know how important seeding is.
And it's also emotional to be a coach. And you had a really emotional moment last Saturday at Gamble Pavilion when, for the final time in a regular season home game, you coached Alex Karaban. And I thought that was a beautiful moment before the game between the two of you. What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's a closeness that develops, especially over, a 4-year career, where you experience so much together. And, he's such a special player. I'll never coach another player like him again. I'll certainly never coach another player like him for 4 straight years. His habits, his mindset, the things that he's about, like as a player, just make your job as the coach of that program so much easier. The work ethic that he establishes, his ability to just care about winning the game and doing whatever it takes. He's just such a special guy, the most mature player you could just ever coach.
Dan, when Alex Karaban came to UConn, it also coincided to when your program went to a different level nationally. It was also the shift for you as a coach because for a long time, you were a blood and guts defensive coach, and his ability at the power forward spot to play offense really changed the way that your teams played. How much will Alex Karaban be a prototype for the type of power forward you're going to look for moving forward at UConn?
Yeah, I think just having a foreman that is as versatile as Alex is, is well-rounded. He's a good defensive player. He's developed into a good defensive player. He's a really good rebounder. He could score, from 25 feet and in. He's a clutch player, but he's a smart player. And with the things that we're trying to do, at the offensive end of the court, it's a perfect fit. Finding a guy that plays in a similar way to Alex plays, but the biggest thing about that kid is just how clutch he is this time of year.
How's UConn 27-3 after dealing with the best non-conference schedule in program history?
I mean, I thought it's weird because at times it's been frustrating. Because I think that we haven't. Played as well as we're capable of playing for complete games over the course of this 30-game season. But it's undeniable that we've had a great season. To be 27-3, and 18-1, in a tough and rugged Big East, and to do what we did in a non-conference. I mean, we proved that even with Tarris and Braylon Mullins being hurt for a lot of the non-conference, that we could beat some of the best teams in college basketball. And I think there's another level that we can get to in March. And, I think that has us excited here because we feel like we've obviously got work to do in the Big East, but we feel like we play our best basketball in non-conference games and in the NCAA tournament.
Dan, you stacked big non-conference game after big non-conference game this year in November and December, and we're seeing a little bit of a trend right now that teams are going to be playing more non-conference games about a week before the tournament is announced in February. Because of the landscape that I think we've seen this year in the Big East with more landmines than quad one opportunities, could UConn potentially down the road play one of those marquee non-conference games in February?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like it. It's funny, you look around, you're just trying to figure out, who's playing 20 games, who's playing 18 conference games. Our conference games, whatever the Nets and the Ken Palms say, like the games are rugged and they're physical and they're a street fight. So, the ability to get, 2 more marquee games, in our non-conference, if we're able to get down to 18, that would certainly be interesting opportunity for us because we have a lot of great scheduling things. I think one of the positives that's been created by the NIL is us programs and athletic departments need to generate more money, and the way to generate more money as we're in rev share with the players is to play better games in better venues that are going to bring in more money. So I think the NIL has helped non-conference scheduling, and we hope we get a chance. I'd love to have a non-conference schedule one year of Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA. I'd love to have Michigan State. I mean, we would love to have a non-conference slate like that. It's obviously risky because they're hard games, but those are the best games.
Dan, as we're always taking inventory about trends in college basketball, the ACC, a conference you're very familiar with, made a shift this year and went to 18 games to give its team some more flexibility in the non-conference portion of the schedule. And we have seen that league amplify considerably how many teams it's going to have in the NCAA tournament. Do you think it will be beneficial for the Big East to then follow suit and go to maybe an 18-game conference schedule moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I personally like it. I get television and I get, the unique opportunity to do a true round robin. It's cool. You're a true champion when you win it. But I also think it does come back to, hurt you a little bit, when you have different programs at different points of what they're trying to accomplish, and using those 2 extra games to either, schedule up, bigger for us, big quad 1A games or what have you, and programs that are in a different place, be able to schedule games that are more winnable. I think it makes a lot more sense. And I think a lot of the leagues that really know how to manipulate the analytics or the net, I mean, that's what they're doing.
A couple of weeks ago, you went to Madison Square Garden for the first time as UConn's head coach, saw more red in the stands than blue. What was it like to go to the world's most famous arena and be a road team when you played St. John's?
I mean, it was like that, I would say, last year, as well, because we had lost at home. In that game where we had a big lead in the first half and it evaporated in stores. And then when we went there for that, we were kind of limping in there. That was kind of the year before was when I'm like, okay, this is not kind of the same kind of advantage that it's been for us coming here. And then this year during the anthem, I always look around during the anthem and I saw a ton of red during the anthem. And that's, and then the boos, the level of boos that you hear when you make your entrance onto the court, that was unfamiliar there.
So you're a coach right now that is in position to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament for the second time in 3 years. So you know as well as anybody how much all of these games matter when you're trying to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And you, in about a week and a half, are going to come back to New York and could potentially play St. John's for a 3rd time on its home floor in Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament. What is it like in your position knowing that you may have to play a road game to win a conference tournament title?
Yeah, I mean, it only registers now as you're saying it, because like all you're thinking about is the next one. And really, you're thinking about Marquette over the weekend, and getting that 18th conference win, and then but I think that would be a great way to end everything up to March Madness. If we could both get there, I think that there's definitely teams in this league that could potentially knock us both off before you get there. We just played one of them, potential the Seton Hall team. I wouldn't enjoy playing them in a Big East tournament again. Or Villanova or some of these teams that definitely can could pick you off. But that would be pretty cool. Saturday night or Saturday, I don't even know if it's night.
Yeah.
Saturday night game, UConn St. John's at the Garden. I mean, that'd be a pretty cool way to end it.
I've tried to process the last 30 years in my head today as I prepared for this interview. I think that would be, if it was a rubber match and you versus Coach Pitino for the Big East tournament title, I think that would be the most anticipated Big East tournament title game since '96, when Ray Allen was on UConn and Iverson was on Georgetown.
Yeah, I mean, I was when we played there the first time this year, I was kind of thought he was going to white suit me. So when I actually shook his hand the first game there, I mean, people think that it's like some real. I mean, we're both competitive. We're both trying to win this league. I obviously got a lot of respect for Coach, but that was what I said to him. I actually said to him on the way out that first game. I said, "Thank God you didn't wear that white suit, because then I would have had no shot tonight." So once I saw him in just a regular, I don't know if he had on gray or blue that night. I thought we were going to win when I saw he didn't have the white suit.
Dan, how has the comeback for UConn this year under your stewardship compared to the initial climb when you were building the program?
I mean, it's nothing like that. I mean, if that was pre-portal, being able to buy a roster. I mean, the days of program building. That's why I see a lot of first-year coach, second-year coach, third-year coach, the amount of wins coaches have. It's not applicable to what the sport was not too long ago, when you took over a program and actually had to build something over the course of years. All those small victories along the way, recruiting battles, tough losses, just inching your way closer. It's almost like you kind of get robbed of that. So, in a weird way, that climb back up the first time, there's nothing that I'll ever experience in sports as gratifying as having actually built something over the course of years and get those 2 trophies.
27-3 through 30 games. And obviously, as you mentioned earlier, your team was good enough without Braylon Mullins and Tarris Reed to potentially beat Arizona, who's going to be the 1 seed in the West region on Selection Sunday. Now that you've had 30 games to digest your team, how does it compare to the teams in 24 and 23 that won the national title?
Yeah, I mean, they've I would say we've won as frequently or whatever, like we've had as good a year. Not obviously nowhere, you can't compare it to the 2014. What the 2014 did, I think that's one of the best team that in recent memory in college basketball. Up there with a handful of teams. So, when I compare it to the 23 team that was able to, kind of get the right matchups, put it all together at the right time of year. We were able to do that, at the right time, and we were able to do it, at different points in the year. So, I think our team has got the capability, to be a top offensive team, to be a top defensive team, to put it all together and make a run in March. Because we've proven that we could beat the best teams. I just don't think we've proven, that we could be a dominant team or dominate, average opponents. We haven't been, we've at times it's been frustrating, but you also feel like you've had a great year to be 27-3. But I also don't feel like, that this team has been a bunch of killers the way that you need to be this time of year.
The one thing that I really loved about the 2023 team, especially late in the season, is you got so much pop off your bench on both sides of the floor. Calcaterra, Diarra, Aline, Klingon. And in spurts this season, we have seen the bench for this team be potent. But I remember asking you a couple weeks ago in the Garden if that was going to be a difference maker for you guys, because against St. John's in the Garden, your bench was not very productive. How much could that be a difference maker for UConn here moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the bench is definitely big. It's, and they've been a difference for us, especially when you're dealing with those injuries. I'm sorry for the word salad on the season, but it's complicated. You want to be playing dominant basketball. You want to look like the best team in the country. And, I think we have the capability to get there. And the bench is definitely a huge part of it, with Jaylin Stewart and Jaden Ross, two wings that it could impact the game defensively, offensively, some perimeter firepower there, and some multi-positional defenders. Big Eric Ryba has been a great combo at center for us, like we had in those championship teams. He's been great this year. Then having Malachi Smith, he's probably played better for him in the non-conference, maybe the Big East, the physicality of it, the roughness of it. I think he'll play better as we get to, again, play some of those non-conference games, and the bench is definitely a strength.
You mentioned Jaylin Stewart. He's been banged up a bit recently. Are you expecting him to obviously get some of the rust off on Saturday against Marquette?
Yeah, I think he's healing up, and he's I know by the end of the week, I think he'll be back in practice. Hopefully by the end of the week, and then getting him back will be critical to what we're trying to do.
And there's nobody more critical to what you're trying to do than the guy who's obviously manning the point guard spot. And you were a former point guard, so point guards are always tough on the point guards that they coach. How now, over the next 5 weeks, do you get Silas Demary to emulate what we saw 2 years ago from Tristan Newton?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Silas, he's been one of the best point guards in the country this year. When you're looking at beyond just how a guy plays on a ball screen, making his reads, I'm talking about a three-way player. This guy is a defensive ball hawk, with size. He gets on the defensive glass, and then he'll get on the offensive glass in a big spot. Because the guy's 6'4". And then I think again, he plays on a team with a lot of balance. I don't know if there's another team in the country, with 5 players, as close to each other in terms of scoring average. So, he's got all these weapons on the perimeter with Karaban, solo ball, Braylon Mullins, and then he's got these centers that he's got to get the ball to too with Tarris and Eric. So, he plays a complicated position. He's shown that he can facilitate, defend, and lead us to a victory that way. But he's also shown on nights where we need him to go get 20 plus and make big shots. He's done that. So
you mentioned Tarris Reed. We talked before the season about how a year ago the big problem for Tarris Reed was simply staying on the floor. And when he was able to stay on the floor, he was an All-American caliber big. How much is he the wild card here throughout, obviously, the rest of the season and into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, for all of us, it's the responsibility that comes with being all who we are at places like UConn or Duke or Kansas. It's like these are big spots, and it's a big time of year, and how your career is going to be remembered, how you're going to be remembered around stores as a player, what your legacy is. I mean, that story is about to be written, and for him. Our team's going to go as he goes. When he's locked in and focused and protecting the rim and playing with force offensively and posting up deep and playing to an identity for him that could be dominant. We're one of the best teams in the country. When he starts drifting and experimenting. And losing focus, you'll see the inconsistency with our team. So, that's the responsibility you have sometimes when you're one of the most talented players in college basketball, which is what this guy is. He's a total freak of nature. Physically, he's got great skill. He's a great human being and teammate, and the guy wants to win. And this is a time of year where if this guy shows up, like we saw against St. John's, like we saw at Villanova, like we saw versus BYU, when those guys were a healthy team, he's a difference maker in college.
He's definitely a difference maker. And, it's interesting when you look back on the two runs you had to two national titles, there were different paths to get there. In 2023, you guys went out west and played great basketball in Las Vegas. In 2024, it was Brooklyn, Boston to the Final Four. Now that you've went through, obviously, two different paths, how much do geographic advantages make in terms of where you play during the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think it's a big advantage. I think, especially the first weekend, just being, having the best seed possible, playing at a place that you've got a level of comfortability, where potentially if you're able to get through that first game and now more tickets become available, now you've got a much bigger presence in terms of a UConn crowd, whether that's Philadelphia, or Buffalo for us, just being in that place, I think it's a huge advantage. Second, the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight game, obviously in Boston, that was a pretty big advantage. But we were able to, in 23, go out to Vegas and maintain our level.
The year is 2026, but then the year was 2017 when you broke through and got to the NCAA tournament at Rhode Island by winning the Atlantic 10 tournament. I still remember the game against Will Wade and VCU, and that team, we have to remember, went on to beat Creighton and take an Oregon team that went to the Final Four to the wire in the round of 32. That was less than 10 years ago. Do you ever, during your commute from home to the office or when you're on a long bus ride, stop and think how much things have changed for you in less than a decade?
Yeah, I think at times you do. And probably what comes to my mind the most, when you bring that VCU game up in Pittsburgh is I just remember it was an early game. I think it was a noon game or a 1 o'clock game. And I remember, I think Will was like 2 treadmills over from me. in the hotel gym that morning. I think might have been like he might have been 2 treadmills over, just trying to run off some of that, game day jitters and anxiety. But I definitely at times, when you do get some quiet, you're incredibly grateful. I think part of the senior day experience with Alex, a lot of the emotion was how I felt about, how much that kid changed my life. Yeah. The narrative of my life in basketball, my family's life, my career, just a level of success that players like Karaban and Klingon, Andre Jackson and Spencer and T. New, and just Hawk, Adama Sanogo. These guys, Steph Castle. It took me that long just to get to Steph Castle. That's how great the players that we've had at UConn have been the last couple of years.
You referenced Jordan Hawkins, who obviously was a major part of that 2023 team. And Dan, I felt in 2022, he was coming on late in the season, and then he got kind of banged up late in the year, and he never really hit his stride as a freshman. I'm curious, Jordan Hawkins, that year you won a national title, was one of the best shooters that college basketball had seen in a long, long time. How does Jordan Hawkins compare as a freshman, as a wing shooter compared to Braylon Mullins?
Oof. I think they both, they both have that crazy moving full speed ability to contort their body and still shoot a beautiful basketball that looks like it's going to go in every single time. I would say with Braylon, he's kind of he came in as a freshman with a different, level of physicality than Hawk came in as a freshman. But I do see, with Braylon, like a toughness and a resolve the last couple of games, and a confidence that has really grown in this kid where, I think he's he's a guy down the stretch for us, that could have some really, really big performances, and, he doesn't hurt us at the defensive end. The thing about Braylon is, he's gotten so much better defensively. He cares about that end of the court. And even though he's obviously a pretty high level draft prospect, the guy, he kind of carries himself every day like he's a nobody, like he's not in mock drafts, and that's refreshing when you get kids like that and they come from families like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure obviously he's a perfect fit for the program at UConn, a program now that has won 6 national championships since 1999, 6 national titles in 27 years. How often does Dan Hurley think about winning another one?
I mean, this time of year, you think, this time of year, it goes, it crosses your mind. I mean, I think what crosses your mind is just how bulletproof you need your team to be. Like you have an unbelievable year and you get to a Final Four. Like you have an unbelievable year and you get to the Final Four, but win a national championship, you got to win 2 more games.
Yeah.
That's how hard it is to win the national championship. Just how many things you need to have in your favor. The health, obviously, matchups. Playing well at the right time of year, just obviously all those different things. But I mean, that's what we're all in it. I think, we're all in it to pursue championships. And if that's not on your mind, then I don't know where you have your mind.
Dan, I know you've always had a great reverence for Jay Wright, and I remember he told me once that his first time he went to the Final Four, he thought he was on a business trip, but there's so much other extra stuff going on around you that he probably did too much of the extra stuff, and it might have impacted his team a little bit, and he never did that the 3 times after. How much, as you're a coach and a steward of the program, even though everybody around you, your family, your friends, the fans associated with the program, want to treat that like it's a vacation, do you need to even keep your circle even tighter because of the goal and what's at stake?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty oblivious to it, or at least the way that we've done it is like, I think like the family, the friends have a much different experience at the Final Four than like the players, the coaches, the managers, because we're pretty dialed in. The biggest thing you're dealing with is the media, media obligations, things that you're doing, from that standpoint. But, the preparation is absolutely the same. The only real difference is your bus rides to and from practice to the arena to the stadium for the game. You got a police escort. I mean, your family and friends are enjoying the experience of the Final Four. And then for me, I'm lucky. My wife Andrea, she takes so much off my plate with the tickets. Like people know not to text me asking for tickets. They know to go to my wife Andrea or potentially Paul Wetterman.
Paul Wetterman, a man who years ago was milking cows at a farm in Guilford, Connecticut, and is now running point on ticket requests for UConn. America indeed. Now, beyond that, I know before, obviously, you got to this place at UConn and took the program back to the pinnacle of the sport, you were driven to make a name for yourself in coaching because obviously you grew up in a family where your father was a Hall of Famer as a high school coach, and your brother obviously was arguably the best college point guard to ever play the game at Duke. Once you've achieved all that, though, and you won back-to-back national titles in as dominant a fashion as we've ever seen in the history of college basketball, what is now the driving force for you internally?
I think just the same things. I mean, it's the things about coaching that you love, like being part of a team that's on a very particular mission that you're striving and working real hard for, right? Like it's the relationship with the people you coach with, the players that you're developing, that families have, trusted, their kids' career in your hands, and their college experience to learn and grow. So like, you've got all those like kind of things that are very personal, that make this job very gratifying. But then you also have the competitive side of you, or now your new baseline for what you feel like, is how your season should end. Like once you experience championship level success, seasons that don't end that way, that just doesn't measure up. And, you as a group don't get rewarded for those experiences that are once in a lifetime. It's obviously, it's not realistic, to have that as your new baseline for a season being successful, but that's what it evolves into.
And it's evolved into a great comeback this year for the UConn Huskies. I would like to obviously, again, make the comparison that your season, which I felt last July was going to be comparable to the plot of Rocky III, the great comeback. And ironically enough, the fight at the end of Rocky III, the rematch between he and Clubber Lang, was at Madison Square Garden, which is obviously the home of this year's Big East tournament. But beyond, obviously, what happens on March 14th, there's going to be a bracket that's revealed on March 15th that will give us, obviously, the template for this year's NCAA tournament. Let's wrap on this. Aside from Tarris Reed being a dominant force, aside from getting great play off the bench, what are the biggest keys for UConn to be in a comparable situation as it was just a couple of years ago in 23 and 24?
Yeah, I think for us, like a lot of it is just going to come down to not turning the ball over. I would say that turning the ball over, has been one of the things that has hurt us the most this year. Just that, and it's not even so much against pressure. It's just, throwing away possessions. So I would say, that it's beyond that. Our defense has been top 10, top 5 a lot of the year. Our offense is improved a lot, minus that lack of ball security. We went through a rough stretch in the beginning of Big East play where we were dreadful on offense, but we've been able to, I think that the potential of what we got on the perimeter, with the firepower, again, with Braylon Solo, Alex Karaban, what we've got at point guard, what we have with our centers, I think we're a dangerous team.
Well, Dan, it's going to be a lot of fun to cover. Appreciate a couple minutes. Know how busy you are. Looking forward to staying connected along the way, and all the best in the postseason.
This is March.
That's UConn head coach Dan Hurley. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.